Welcome to This Is My Architecture. Today we're talking to Troy from Xero. Welcome, Troy.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about Xero.
So Xero is a cloud-based accounting platform, primarily for small to medium enterprises and also for accounting practices alike, and we operate across the globe.
Excellent. Now, today we're talking about the core platform that supports your customers, and specifically the SQL Server backend behind that core platform. Are you able to describe the SQL backend to us?
Certainly. So we've got a SQL cluster, and it's represented here with 5 different nodes split across the 2 separate regions. We have 2 primary instances which are communicating in a synchronous manner, so they're constantly up to date to the same degree.
And this is using always-on SQL Server technology?
Correct, yep. Yes. We've got the other node here, which is also communicating, and that's in an asynchronous mode. So that's also set up to be a read-only node, which is used by our data services or BI team for extracting information out to their various suite of tools. Again, we have the second region, which is there for resiliency, and all of these nodes are all talking to one another and keeping up to date. We've got the communication between these two and the main primaries is much like this one in that it's asynchronous as well.
Okay, so in the event of a failure of one of these nodes, what happens?
If it's a failure of a synchronous node and just one fails, then it automatically fails over with zero data loss to the other synchronous primary. And if it's a asynchronous node that fails, nothing changes.
Excellent. And so if you need to promote one of the nodes in this region or this node, what sort of delay does it take before it becomes live, and what kind of data loss, because that's always a problem with asynchronous replication, are you looking at?
Correct. Yeah, so if we're talking about within the same region, because of the low latency connectivity that we've got between the availability zones, it's milliseconds if anything, and there's slightly more when we're going intra-region there, but it's still milliseconds, or it tops a few seconds. So it's all depending on the type of failure and what's happening at the point in time will depend on what sort of delay you'll be looking at.
So the design is multi-region, that's for providing extra high reliability for your customers. But I understand you've got plans for the future which takes advantage of the multi-region architecture as well. Can you describe that? Yeah,
correct. So given that we are running across multiple regions at the moment, there's the potential of the nodes that are currently asynchronous. We could potentially promote them to being synchronous in the event of legislative pressure or otherwise that required us to be operating out of a separate region to the other.
Okay, so you could have certain customers have their primary nodes in a region closest to them and spread the load across the global infrastructure.
That is certainly a possibility, yes.
Excellent. So this is one environment. How many environments are you looking after across the entire Xero?
All up, we've got just over 100 EC2 instances supporting our SQL clusters, and residing across those SQL instances we have about 200 databases ranging from a couple of gigs up to 6 or so terabytes, with a total provisioned EBS volumes being around about 1.5 petabytes at the moment.
Wow, that's a lot of data.
It is.
And how do you go about managing that many environments?
Historically, we had built a lot of scripts to be able to do this within AWS, and we have taken those scripts and migrated them into Octopus Deploy, which allows us to essentially deploy an entire cluster by the click of a button, which is great. Because it takes what historically, using our traditional hosting providers, it would have taken from provisioning through to configuration and actual deployment anywhere around about 6 or so weeks.
Wow.
And it's reduced that down to literally around about an hour to deploy an entire 5-node cluster now. So
that's a great story.
It is, yeah, a great benefit for us.
Now, with accounting software, I imagine that it's really important to keep a lot of backups of your data so that you can recover to different points in time. Can you describe how you do that?
Yeah, so the backups go from are taken off the primaries and they go to locally attached EBS volumes, and once they have been there for a certain period of time, they are then migrated off onto the S3 buckets, which we take use of lifecycle policies as well, so that we migrate them from being on S3 to infrequently accessed, and then finally to Glacier for long-term storage.
Excellent. Okay, thanks Troy for coming today to describe this. It's been very interesting. And thanks for joining us on This Is My Architecture.